All right, so what's up, y'all? It's the real DJ Red with 2Ds. I'm actually at one of my events for the day early, so I figure I'll shoot this video in reference to picking the right computer for what you're doing. And the reason why I came across that thought was, so this past week, one of my colleagues that work with me on one of the websites that I live stream on had some technical issues this past weekend as far as trying to stream. Here's the thing, and it's really has nothing to do with I'm not going to say there's a preference of Mac over PC. It all depends on what you're going to use it for, just as well as there might be some DJs that use virtual DJ and they might say virtual DJ is better than Serato. Serato users are probably saying Serato is better than virtual or record box. It's all a preference. They're all pretty good programs. It depends on what you want it for. Same thing with computers. Here's what the problem ran into. And I'm going to use my computers, MacBooks that I have, for example. I have used PC before. I switched over to Mac some years ago. However, I did go back and buy a Windows PC desktop computer when I started fooling around with some gaming stuff or whatever, and it does work better on the Windows that it do on Mac. It all depends on what you're using it for. Okay, so now when I started streaming, and this is before this whole thing with the P word and before the pandemic, I'm gonna say about 2015 when I started doing live streaming. I was using a MacBook Pro 2012 with a i5 processor and 16 gigs of RAM. When I was just doing audio streaming, it worked fine for that. When I started getting into video streaming, as to not just playing music through a website, but actually doing visual on there where you're actually able to see me, I started running into problems. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. The problem with that was, and I found out later on, was that the i5 processor was not going to keep up with running a visual live stream. Running just audio and Serato is fine. When you start running visual and Serato, and for broadcasting, for example, using one of the programs that I still use now, which is OBS, an i5 processor is not going to keep up with it, even with 16 gigs of RAM and using a Mac Pro. Okay? It wasn't until, I believe it was last year, that I got another MacBook. I believe this one is a 2012 also, but it's i7. And when I got it, it only had, I think, 4 or 8 gigs of RAM. I maxed it out to 16 gigs of RAM. And now I'm able to stream flawlessly and run music videos from Serato and have a browser open for me to monitor my chat rooms, as well as I had I think it's a 47 or 52 inch monitor in the same room that I'm in. I have it across the on the other side of the wall, so I'm looking at the camera, but I'm also looking at the monitor, looking at the chat room on there. I'm able to run all of that off of that Mac with the i7 16 gigs of RAM. When I'm looking at the buffer on Serato, for those of you guys that use Serato, and on the top right corner you might start seeing a green line wavering depending on how much CPU usage you are using. I'm with all of that I'm using there, I'm maybe just getting to halfway, and it works flawlessly. If I try to do that with the i5, soon as I turn it on, I'm more than 3/4 the way up. As soon as I hit start streaming on the OBS, it's in the peak. It's in the peak. It will cause your videos to stream choppy. Will cause a lot of buffering. You might not see it on your end, but if you're monitoring your live stream, let's say from a iPad, tablet, another phone, or another device or something, you will see it start to chop up on there. Let's say if you're running with a Windows computer, you might be able to get away with it a little bit more with the Windows computer and with an i5 versus the Mac. The other reason being is that when OBS was created, from what I'm understanding, I might be wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong. When OBS was created, OBS was mainly created for Windows and not Apple products. So it works easier with Windows than it does Apple. Not saying that it can't work with Apple, but you just have to have, I would say, at least an i7 processor with at least 16 gigs of RAM. For those of you that might have a brand new Mac with maybe an i9 and a 32 gigs of RAM, you can run everything off of there and it shouldn't have no problem. You probably won't even hear the fans come on there. With mine, I do hear the fans come on a little bit because mine is a 15-inch, so there's 2 fans in there. I really don't pay no attention to it because when I'm streaming, I always have on my headphones. But again, with that Windows computer that I do have, I did try to stream on it before. It did work. I believe that Windows computer has 8 gigs of RAM, and it's an i5. So it worked fine on a Windows. But if you're trying to do it on a Mac, I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm just saying that you have to have an i7 with 16 gigs of RAM at least. This is from what I've done and what I've experienced. At least that, in order to stream and have a good looking stream without buffering, without it being choppy like that. If you're trying anything below that, then it's going to start giving you problems. Your Mac will heat up. Your Serato will maybe start to freeze a little bit. Since I've been running the i7, I've had maybe 1 or 2 times, and that was because I was running a lot of programs open. I'm going to give you an example. Serato DJ Pro was open. Currently still running the 2.5.0, I believe. Either 2.5.0 or 2.4.6. I haven't updated to the latest ones as of yet. Running Serato DJ, running the video for it, which that takes up a lot. OBS. Once you turn it on, you'll start to see your CPU usage go up. When you start streaming, you will really see it go up then. So OBS is another one. iTunes was open. Web browser was open, which was Google Chrome, and I might have had 4 pages open on the Google Chrome. One for the page that I stream on, which is Megasource, Mixcloud, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook at one point. And then there was another program that I had open. I forgot what it was for, what I was doing with it, but I had at least a good 4 or 5 programs open at the same time. And with that i7, it got maybe up to halfway on my CPU when I'm looking at the buffer meter on Serato. So again, if you have a Windows computer, You can probably get away with it a little bit better, especially if you're running a program like OBS, which is, I call it a CPU hog, because when it comes to Mac, it uses up a lot of CPU usage on there. I've been told a long time ago, when it comes to gaming and stuff like that, because of graphics on the gaming, that Windows computers are better than Mac. I'll agree with that hands down. I've seen that for myself. But if you're going to be streaming your live sets, whether you're doing it on Mixcloud, Twitch, or what have you, and you're running OBS and you have a Mac, I would say that you need at least an i7 processor with 16 gigs of RAM. If you run anything lower than that, your quality probably won't be that great. That's just my opinion on that, and this is not just my opinion, but this is stuff that I've been trying and working on ever since 2015. I've been doing this long before the incline of or increase of DJs doing it within the last 2 years. And everything that I've done, I've tried this. If it failed, okay, I tried something else. Went from doing my 13-inch Mac with the i5. I was doing it with 8 gigs of RAM when I was just doing audio. When I started doing video, couldn't do it. Couldn't handle it. Video was choppy, a lot of dropout, freezing, and all of the other stuff. Once I did up it to 16 gigs of RAM, it started doing a little bit better. Then when we came along and started using OBS, that was a whole nother ball game. I had to find another way of doing that again. It's kind of like you're working on a race car. You end up winning one race, but now you got to beat this other guy here, and he's running a 9-second car, and you're running a 10-second car. You got to do something to make that car run a little bit faster. Same thing with the streaming when it comes to these computers. If you figure out one way of doing something, you might have to figure out another way once you start increasing stuff, and start changing things as far as what are you streaming, how you're streaming, and stuff like that. So if any of you guys got any questions about it, hit me up. I'm always willing to try to help someone out. Until then, peace. I'm out of here.